matter how much money you make, it never feels like enough. You can earn more, save more, even hit goals you once dreamed about. And somehow, the anxiety is still there. So here's the real question. What if the problem was never your income? In addition to this, there's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. How much money would it take for you to finally feel okay? Not rich, not set for life, just okay. Just that quiet, calm feeling of having enough. No financial anxiety. No lying awake doing mental math at 2 a.m. No checking your bank account 3 times before you buy something small. Pick a number. Go on. Whatever comes to mind. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. If you're honest with yourself, there's a very good chance that number is somewhere between 20 and 50% more than what you currently have. And if you ask someone who already earns that amount the same question, they'll give you a number that's 20 to 50% more than what they have. The number changes. The feeling never arrives. A person earning $30,000 a year thinks $50,000 would fix it. The person at $50,000 thinks $80,000 would do it. The person at $80,000 is sure that 6 figures would solve everything. And then they hit 6 figures, and the target quietly moves to $150,000. It's not greed. It's not even a lack of discipline. Something much deeper and much stranger is going on. Something rooted in the way our brains were built, the way our society is structured, and a psychological trap so well designed that most people never even realize they're inside it. That trap has a name. It's called the scarcity mindset. And once you understand exactly how it works and why it keeps running even when you have more than enough, you'll never look at your relationship with money quite the same way again. The story most people tell themselves goes something like this. I don't feel financially secure because I don't have enough money. Once I have more money, the anxiety will stop. Once I hit that number, I'll be able to relax. The feeling of scarcity is a money problem, and more money is the solution. This belief is so logical, so intuitive, that almost nobody questions it. But here's what's strange. Walk into a room of people at almost any income level, and most of them will describe their financial situation using the same language. Tight, stretched, not quite there yet. Almost, but not quite. A family getting by on $35,000 a year describes their money as tight. A couple earning a combined $180,000 a year describes their money as tight. A business owner pulling in $500,000 a year will sit across from you and, with complete sincerity, explain that things are really tight right now. If scarcity were purely about how much money you have, these experiences wouldn't sound identical. But they do, which means we've been diagnosing the wrong problem. The feeling of not having enough isn't just a financial condition. It's a psychological one. And solving a psychological condition with more money is like trying to fix blurry vision by buying a bigger television. You might feel better for a moment, but the underlying problem is still there. And it will keep creating the same experience no matter what number shows up in your bank account. To understand the scarcity trap, we need to go back further than economics. We need to go back to survival. For the vast majority of human existence, think hundreds of thousands of years, not decades, scarcity was real. Not a feeling, not a mindset, an actual daily reality. Food was genuinely scarce. Shelter was uncertain. A bad winter, a failed harvest, A dry season could mean the difference between your family making it or not. And so the human brain developed a set of tools for surviving scarcity. Powerful, efficient, automatic tools. A mental alarm system that fires whenever resources feel low. Heightened focus on threats and shortages. A bias toward hoarding and conservation. An obsessive attentiveness to what you don't have. Because in a world where running out meant death, that attentiveness kept you alive. These adaptations were brilliant. They worked. They're a big part of why your ancestors survived long enough to eventually produce you. The problem is that those tools haven't been updated. Your brain still runs the same scarcity detection software it ran 100,000 years ago. It does not know that you live in the most resource-abundant moment in all of human history. It doesn't know that the shortage of food it's detecting is actually just the fact that you haven't been to the grocery store this week. It doesn't know that the financial anxiety it's generating is in response to a checking account balance that, by any historical standard, would have been unimaginable wealth. It just knows. The alarm says not enough, so it fires. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not just your ancient brain working against you here. There's a second mechanism layered on top of the evolutionary one, and this one is entirely modern. It's called relative deprivation, and it works like this. Human beings don't evaluate how much they have in absolute terms. They evaluate it relative to a reference group, the people around them. Your brain isn't asking, do I have enough to survive? It's asking, do I have enough compared to the people I'm comparing myself to? For most of history, your reference group was your village, maybe 150 people. You could see their lives directly. You knew where you stood. The comparison was limited and relatively stable. But now, your reference group is effectively the entire visible world. Social media means you're constantly automatically exposed to highlight reels from thousands of people, many of whom are wealthier, or at least appear to be. Television, advertising, every platform you use is specifically engineered to surface aspirational content. People living larger, doing more, having more. So your brain runs its comparison algorithm, the one designed for a village of 150, against a reference pool of millions. And the result is predictable. Almost everyone looks like they have more than you. Your brain registers this as falling behind. The alarm fires. You feel scarce. You feel like you need more. And here's the cruel irony at the center of all of this. The more you earn, the larger your reference group tends to get promoted, and your peer group shifts upward. Move to a nicer neighborhood, and your neighbors have nicer things. Build a social media following, and you're suddenly surrounded, virtually, by people at the next level above you. In other words, the more you succeed, the more comparisons your brain has access to that make you feel like you're still not enough. The scarcity trap doesn't loosen as you earn more. In many cases, it tightens. There's a landmark study I want to tell you about. It was conducted by researchers at Princeton. You might have come across a version of it before, because the findings were so striking, they made headlines everywhere. The study looked at the relationship between income and emotional well-being, and what it found challenged almost everything people assumed about money and happiness. Up to a certain income level, the point where genuine basic needs and a reasonable quality of life are covered, more money does improve how people feel on a day-to-day basis. That makes intuitive sense. Going from financial crisis to financial stability has a real measurable impact on stress, anxiety, and emotional health. But above that point, the relationship changes. More money continues to improve how people evaluate their lives in the abstract. On the whole, things are going well. But the day-to-day emotional experience of life doesn't get meaningfully better. The baseline anxiety doesn't disappear. The feeling of scarcity doesn't resolve. Why? Because you can't earn your way out of a mindset. The scarcity trap isn't a bank balance problem, it's a cognitive pattern problem. And cognitive patterns don't respond to deposits. Here's what I mean. Sendil Mullainathan, a Harvard economist, and Eldar Shafir, a psychologist, spent years studying how scarcity actually works in the mind. What they discovered was that scarcity, the feeling of not having enough, regardless of objective reality, does something measurable to your thinking. It narrows your mental focus. It consumes cognitive bandwidth. It pulls your attention obsessively toward what's missing and away from everything else. They called this the scarcity mindset. And it doesn't just feel bad. It actually makes you worse at making decisions. People operating under a scarcity mindset make more impulsive financial choices. They focus intensely on immediate problems and neglect long-term planning. They become less creative in solving problems. Their capacity for forward thinking genuinely shrinks. Think about what this means for your financial life. If you're constantly operating from a place of, I don't have enough, you're making financial decisions with a cognitively impaired version of your brain. Not because you're not smart, not because you lack discipline, but because the feeling of scarcity itself is consuming the mental resources you need to make good long-term decisions. And here's the most painful part of the trap: the behaviors that scarcity drives you toward. Spending impulsively for relief, avoiding thinking about money because it feels stressful, focusing only on immediate pressures, are exactly the behaviors that create more financial problems, which generate more scarcity feelings, which narrow your thinking further, which lead to more of the same behaviors. It's a loop. And most people spin inside it for their entire financial lives without ever seeing the shape of it clearly. There's even a name for the financial dimension of this loop. Behavioral economists call it the scarcity tax. The idea that being poor, or feeling poor, which is not always the same thing, costs more in mental energy, worse decisions, and compounding consequences than simply the absence of money itself. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Real financial hardship is real. There are people for whom scarcity is not a feeling. It is an objective, material reality. And the solutions for that are different from the solutions for a mindset trap. But the remarkable thing the research shows is that the mental experience of scarcity, the cognitive pattern, the alarm system, the obsessive focus on what's missing, can run even when material conditions are genuinely fine. You can have enough in every measurable sense and still operate from inside the scarcity trap. That's what makes it so persistent, and that's what makes understanding it so important. So how do you actually get out? The first and most important step is this: recognize the trap for what it is. Not a financial problem that needs a financial solution. A cognitive pattern that needs a different kind of intervention. When you feel that low-grade financial anxiety, that background hum of not quite enough, your instinct is to try to solve it by getting more money. But if the mechanism we've just walked through is correct, more money simply raises the ceiling while the feeling stays the same. You're trying to fill a bottomless cup. Instead, you need to do something that feels a little strange at first. You need to redirect the comparison. Here's a simple but surprisingly powerful practice. Once a week, just once, spend 5 minutes writing down what you currently have in your financial life that you didn't have 5 years ago. Not what you wish you had. What you actually have now that you didn't then. Income you didn't have. Skills you've built. Any savings. Any progress. Any step forward, however small. This isn't positive thinking or self-help fluff. This is a deliberate intervention in the comparison algorithm your brain is running. Instead of comparing yourself to people above you, which your environment is optimized to make you do. You're comparing yourself to your past self. And for most people, that comparison tells a very different story. The brain's alarm system runs on relative data. You can't turn it off, but you can change the data you're feeding it. The second practice is what I'd call building an enough baseline. Most people have a vague sense of what enough means, usually defined as slightly more than they currently have. The scarcity trap feeds on this vagueness. Vague targets always feel out of reach. Instead, get specific. What would your life actually look like if you had enough? Not the aspirational fantasy version, the genuine baseline. What monthly income, after expenses, would give you real security? What would you be doing? What wouldn't you be worrying about? What would change? When you have a clear, grounded definition of enough, you create a target. The scarcity alarm can actually register as reachable. Vague, more will never be enough. Specific, enough can be. Third, and this one matters enormously for building actual wealth, separate your financial decisions from your emotional state. Remember what the research shows. When you're feeling the scarcity mindset, your decision-making quality degrades. So the worst possible moment to make a significant financial decision is when you're feeling most financially anxious. Build a personal rule. No significant financial decisions, large purchases, investment moves, changes to spending. When you're in an acute state of financial anxiety, give it 48 hours. Make a note of what you want to do, put it on a calendar 2 days out, and revisit it then. This single habit can prevent an enormous amount of impulsive spending and reactive decision-making over a lifetime. And fourth, perhaps the deepest one, manage your reference group deliberately. This doesn't mean unfriending everyone who has more than you. It means being conscious about what you're feeding your comparison engine. If you spend 3 hours a day scrolling content that's primarily aspirational, people richer, more successful, further ahead, your brain is going to generate a continuous stream of not enough signals, regardless of how well your actual financial life is going. Curate what you consume. Spend time with people who have a grounded, healthy relationship with money, not just people who have more of it. The comparison algorithm runs on whatever data you give it. Give it better data. Here's what I want you to hold on to from everything we've covered today. The scarcity trap is not a moral failing. It's not a sign that you're bad with money, or that you lack willpower, or that you're somehow fundamentally broken in your relationship with finances. It's a survival system running in a world it was never designed for against a backdrop of social comparison that's been deliberately engineered to make it fire constantly. You are not broken. You are just running very old software in a very new environment. And here's the thing about software. Once you understand what it's doing and why, you're no longer just a passenger. You can start to make deliberate choices about which programs you run. The people who build real, lasting wealth, and, more importantly, who actually feel secure and at peace in their financial lives, aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who figured out what enough actually means to them, and who stopped letting the comparison algorithm define it for them. That's a harder thing to do than opening an investment account. It's harder than budgeting. It requires looking at the way you actually think about money, not just what you do with it, and being willing to challenge some of the most automatic, invisible assumptions driving your behavior. But here's the payoff. When you stop trying to outrun the feeling of scarcity with more income, something remarkable becomes possible. You can actually start using your money strategically. You can build toward real goals instead of just reacting to a never-moving feeling of not quite enough. You can make decisions from a place of clarity instead of from a place of quiet panic. The trap is real, but it has a door, and understanding it, truly understanding how it works and why, is the key. So the next time you feel that background hum of not enough, I want you to ask yourself one question before you do anything else. Is this a financial problem? Or is this the alarm? Because those two things require completely different responses, and knowing the difference, that knowledge, right there, is worth more than any raise you'll ever get. If this made you realize something about how you think about money, then you're already ahead of most people, because real financial growth doesn't start with earning more, it starts with thinking differently. If you want more videos like this, where we break down the psychology behind money and the habits that actually build wealth, subscribe. Because the goal isn't just to make money, it's to finally feel like you have enough.